Hello and welcome to the Action Network podcast, a UFC betting preview presented by DraftKings. I'm your host, Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward to help you break down the UFC Vegas 113 card, give you our best bets, favorite underdogs, top props, Super Bowl, cross-sport, prop bets, and more. And if you'd like to tell some of the bets that we discussed on today's show, look for the quick slip link both in the podcast and video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. 13 fight card from the Apex 13 fight card as of now. We'll see how many we have left after weigh-ins. Already have had two late replacements. Prelims scheduled to start at 5 p.m. Eastern. Main card at 9 p.m. Eastern from the Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. Billy, before we get into the main event, just wanted to briefly recap the discussion we had last week concerning live betting in the Paramount Plus era and the difference in the live feeds between Paramount Plus and UFC Fight Pass. So what was your determination, your scientific experiment? How did that end up turning out? Which did you determine was faster? And previously, even before, even when we were on ESPN Plus, it still seemed like there was an 8 to 10 second delay maybe between the feed that we were getting and what was actually going on the arena. So which did you determine was faster between Fight Pass and Paramount, and how long do you think the delay actually is?
Yeah, so to set the scene a little bit, I had my television, which runs through my PS5 and has wired internet on one broadcast, my laptop on Wi-Fi on another. When I had Paramount Plus on the TV and Fight Pass on my laptop, Paramount Plus was about 10 seconds ahead, and then I switched it just to see if the wired internet made the difference. Paramount Plus still finished like a second ahead, which I was a little surprised by. I thought it would be Fight Pass. I don't know what the true delay is. I've seen reports from people who went to UFC or Zuffa boxing and said it was like close to a minute when they were watching on the screen and in front of them. I'm hopeful some of those reporters will go to the Apex this week and give us a firm answer. We also don't know what the delay truly was before, right? It seems longer. I don't know that 100%. Also seems like sportsbooks with the live bets, I don't think they're getting ahead of us necessarily. They're just more cautious. Like I'm seeing stuff get taken down a lot faster. They're giving you much less of a window to actually get those live bets in. And they're not adjusting the lines ahead of us. They're just pulling stuff at what seems to be any kind of big moment. So definitely harder to get those live bets down. I'm not sure that the odds are necessarily worse or if it's just going to be a challenge to get them in at all.
Let's discuss Saturday's main event between Mario Bautista and Vinicius Oliveira in the bantamweight division. Oliveira 5-0, including his Contender Series win in the promotion. Bautista 10-3. Two of those losses, though, to Corey Sandhagen and Umar Nurmagomedov, was knocked out by Trevin Jones. Oliveira knocked out three times regionally, so both guys have been put away. That said, I do think Bautista has the better cardio of the pair. And while I do expect a competitive fight for the first 10 to 15 minutes, I would expect Bautista to pull away in the championship rounds down the stretch. He's just the better minute winner, in my opinion, the more reliable minute winner, and has done so against better competition. In several of his wins, Oliveira ended up dropping early minutes and rallying against opponents who tired. He did have more clean performances against the likes of Ricky Simone. Simone did not proactively wrestle in that matchup, though, and I do think you're going to see Bautista mix things up here, mix in the takedowns alongside superior striking volume, and hopefully end up securing a relatively wide decision. Now, I do make Bautista around minus 180 in this matchup. Oliveira getting picked to win the fight about 46, 47% of the time, about 5% higher than his implied odds. So I do view Bautista as the sharper side of the money line. But I also think you could potentially find a better live bet on Bautista at some point after round two, after round three. I think that's, like I said, I expect it to be a very competitive 50-50 fight for the first 10, 12 minutes. And then I think Bautista is going to ultimately take over. He also could win minutes just straight up from the outset by landing takedowns, getting top position. We saw Oliveira taken down, held down by Bernardo Sopai. His takedown defense has looked much improved in the fight since I mentioned the Simone fight where Simone didn't proactively grapple. Regardless of that, I think Oliveira is just leveled up during his time in the promotion, but I also think this is a level jump and a little bit too much too soon for him. So I'm taking Bautista as the favorite, just noting that you may find a better price live after round one. Should also note this line has been moving in. Bautista opened closer to minus 220 and has gotten bet down all the way to minus 140, which is a 10% adjustment in terms of implied probabilities. So if you want to find the best price on Bautista pre-fight, you may even need to wait until fight day as this thing continues to tick in and Oliveira continues to take money. The only other angle I want to mention is the over 3.5 rounds with the goes to decision prop. I do project that at about minus 105, I think, and get as high or maybe even money. You can get as high as plus 140 on the fight to go all 25 minutes. The over 3.5 is around minus 125. I might prefer that considering we've never actually seen either guy in the championship rounds. Assuming Bautista is going to have more success there, but we don't really know. And frankly, Oliveira is the one who's trained for 5-minute rounds in the past. He had 3 championship fights, I believe, in UAE Warriors. None of them went to the 4th round, but he did train for all 3 of those bouts. So Bautista and the over, where I'm going for Saturday's main event, in addition to a Bautista live bet anytime after round 2. Billy, you like the other side here. You're going to take Oliveira pre-fight. Where do you like him down to? What did you see in the tape that attracted you to him?
So I'm not taking Oliveira straight up. I'm taking the finish only on Dog at plus 115, which I was just really surprised that he was an underdog in that market. Bautista is not a great finisher. Like his best game plan is to kind of hold you against the fence and maybe take you down while throwing a lot of not especially hard punches. So that was really surprising to me just to see the line where it is. And then I'm going to try to come back, as you alluded to, with Bautista live. Had you asked me like a week ago how many 5-round fights Mario Bautista had been in his career, I probably would have set the line at like 1.5 with a even over under. Was shocked to learn that he actually has not. He just seems like a guy who is purpose built to fight for 5 rounds because he can steal some minutes like he did against Jose Aldo, among others, without expending a lot of energy.
Yeah, his last
Look,
3 fights were against Aldo, Patchy Mix, which had a lot of attention because that was Patchy's UFC debut, and then Umar, which was like it felt like a title eliminator almost. So I feel like because those 3 fights, it's so much like bigness to them. That's why we think he was in a 5-round fight. But yeah,
right.
it is. I agree. It was bizarre. I thought he had been in at least 2.
Yeah, 100%. And all those guys at various points, but especially Aldo, because he probably lost that fight. He just took like a couple minutes off pushing guys against the fence, which is great if you have to fight 25 minutes against a dude who allegedly walks around 50 pounds heavier than his weight class and is just massive. Like, so that's just a dream scenario. Also, why are we expecting Mario Bautista to finish a guy who we might be giving up 20 pounds to in the cage, who is much more explosive and dynamic? So, not a fight I put a ton of time into watching tape or researching. Was just surprised by that line. So Dog finish only would take that at any plus money. And then the minute I see Bautista also at plus money, I think you take that. And that's a fun way to like arbitrage because if then Bautista wins a decision, you get your original stake back on the Dog side and can win the bet. Obviously, you could lose both if Dog wins a decision, but that seems pretty unlikely. So hopefully it works out this way and Bautista drops a round or two early. As soon as I see him at plus money, I'll be on it and just trying to set up a make at least some money either way situation.
Friday the night, the co-main event and a flyweight showdown between Amir Albazi and Kyoji Horiguchi. Main. That's the nickname Billy has decided to bestow on Horiguchi this week. I think it's a pretty good one. Horiguchi went from a plus 160 underdog against Tagir Ulanbekov. He's now minus 220 for this fight. Has gotten bet all the way up to minus 400. Albazi was favored against Kai Kara France. It was plus 150 against Brandon Moreno, plus 220 in a canceled bout against Tatsuro Taira. Opened again around plus 180 for this fight. Now all the way up to plus 300. So I think there has been a market overcorrection here. Albazi is 3 years younger. He has a 5-inch reach advantage. That said, he probably needs grappling success in order to win this fight, and his BJJ is better than his wrestling. He doesn't always get guys to the ground so easily. You see a lot of fights where he goes 2 for 12 on takedowns, but once he does get on top, it tends to be the round in his favor, and ultimately, he may only need 2 takedowns in order to win this fight, and 1 takedown in order to win 1 round. So Billy going with the plus 3.5 on the point spread, which I also like as well. I do think the money line is wide though. Albazi 3-1. I make that closer to plus 250. And then the ends inside the distance I think is intriguing too. I make that closer to plus 125. They're giving you as high as plus 180. So I may try either Albazi in the point spread or Albazi money line and point spread. But Billy, we're in agreement here on the point spread and the plus 3.5. We think Albazi wins one of these 3 rounds without getting finished. What do you think his actual chances of winning the fight are? And I should note, lastly, the plus 185 ends inside the distance line does align with the flyweight 5 round average. It does not align with the 3 round average. So, do you think that's interesting? That's just a big number on this fight to finish. But do you view Albazi as the likely finisher if it does end up finishing?
I would actually lean towards Horiguchi Mane as the better finisher of the pair. He just has a lot of power, especially at flyweight. You can go back and look at his career, just knocking guys down across promotions in a way that seems to have carried over, at least so far, in his return to the UFC. Yeah, it's really interesting. I have the full breakdown for this, not out yet, but I've written it. I try to do as much of those as I can before really digging into the lines. Like I was tangentially aware that Kyoji was a big favorite, and everything I wrote stylistically was kind of why I thought Horiguchi was going to win. But man, that line is wide, and it feels like this is a both a sell high on Horiguchi and a buy low on Albazi in a weird way because we thought Horiguchi was, I think he was a slight underdog against Tagiru Ulanbekov,
Yeah, plus 160. Yeah.
which is, it's hard to say that you should be an underdog to Ulanbekov and a massive favorite against Amir Albazi, who at his best was clearly a top five flyweight. He's probably one fight away from a title shot, multiple occasions. The thing that makes it scary is he's fought once in like the last 32 months, has had
Yeah.
heart surgery, neck surgery, pulled out of other fights for not those reasons. So probably other stuff going on there too. That is scary and is normally a guy I would like to wait one fight before betting. And if he loses here, I'm almost no matter what the matchup is next time, he's going to be a massive, massive value, assuming he gets back without some other catastrophic injury. But yeah, it's too wide of a line, and Albazi stylistically is pretty good at the one thing that Horiguchi is weak at, which is holding a guy down, and Horiguchi can get pinned and get stuck there against good grapplers. It's how he lost to Patchy Mix in Bellator. Demetrius Johnson took him down 11 times. That was a million years ago in Demetrius Johnson, but that's the game plan of how you beat him if you're going to, and Albazi is good at that. So again, yeah, the plus 3.5, you just, as you pointed out, probably need one takedown, two takedowns wins the fight at plus 300 or so odds on Albazi, you kind of have to take that, I think. So I'm betting to win half a unit on the plus 3.5, and then betting another quarter unit on his money line. Kind of like the ends inside the distance too, is almost a hedge because I do view Kyoji Horiguchi as the better finisher.
Yeah, I think the ends ITD also plays into the injury angles for Albazi as well.
Yeah.
If he comes back, he's not fully healthy. Maybe he gets finished. Also,
Mhm.
I think the small cage helps him too. If I was going to choose cage size for Albazi in this fight, I want the 25-foot cage, not the 30-foot cage. I want him to be able to close the distance a little bit more easily and get his hands on Horiguchi. So, yep, definitely interesting, fun fight between these two. Certainly seems like the line is a little wide. The point spread might be the best way to go about it in terms of playing the underdog. Let's move on to our favorite underdog section. We've got a number of fights we're going to talk about here. One we're going to save for the best bet section. We're going to start off with the first fight on the card. First couple fights on the card. First between Claudia Segula and Priscilla Cachoeira in the women's bantamweight division. Segula 10 years younger, 1 inch reach, 1 inch taller, 4 inch reach advantage. She also trains at ATT, so you can kind of trust her to come in with a grappling oriented game plan here against Cachoeira, who's shown a big vulnerability on the ground. Segula had a weird fight with Arena Alexeva in her last fight. Alexeva, a grappler, never really tried to grapple her. Now Cachoeira, very aggressive striker, can put damage on opponents. Even if she's getting grappled, she's capable of winning a fight where she loses control time but lands more damage on her opponent. She's getting old though, and I think seeing her get KO'd in her last fight by Jocelyn Edwards, 43% striking defense for her career, all the damage she's eaten. Do you think the durability is starting to slip just a little bit? But she's being under-selected in this fight. People picking her to win just 25% of the time. Implied odds closer to 41, 42%. I make her plus 112, would bet Cachoeira down to plus 120. And I also kind of like the goes to decision as well, mostly relative to the divisional average, not because of the stylistic nature of this fight. It does seem relatively binary. Cachoeira on the feet, Segula on the ground. Billy likes the under for that reason. And if I had to, pick a bet to pass on of the Cachoeira or the goes to decision, I'm certainly passing on the goes to decision. So probably just a small bet here on the underdog for me. Billy, Where do you like the under? I think it's around minus 105. Where do you like the under 2.5 between Cachoeira and Segula?
Yeah, I'd probably go minus 120 or so. Not a huge position for me. I actually agree with you on Cachoeira's the money line side. The cliff notes of our underdog section this week is every women's underdog. We between the two of us, we have all three of them covered. I think you probably get at least, almost certainly get at least one, probably get two would be my guess if I had to say how many of the three eventually win. Yes, Segula just doesn't seem to have any real interest in finishing anyone, and Cachoeira throws hard. But Cachoeira eats like 7+ significant strikes per minute. I think she'll eventually get just like volume TKO'd if she doesn't finish Segula. But she's going to be trying to land those bombs the whole time. Segula, not a great grappler herself, will probably try to just like stick and move and like Floyd Mayweather her way to a victory here, which gives her a lot of opportunities to be caught. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Not a huge bet on the under either. I think all of these women's fights, as we'll talk about the next two shortly, give the underdog at least some chance relative to their odds.
Prefer Cachoeira in the small cage as well. Not the
Yeah.
most fleet of foot fighter, so if you're gonna force a bar brawl and allow her to land shots on her opponent, I think it certainly helps her. Prefer Cachoeira in the small cage here. Wayne Kong against Eduardo Mora in the women's flyweight division. This is another binary fight on paper. Mora the better grappler. Kong Wang, the better striker, has a kickboxing win over Valentina Shevchenko. Hits extremely hard. You do see a path though for Mora via the grappling. Round plus 300 currently on the money line. Where do you like her down to? And do you think this is a spot where you're just getting value on the underdog because if she loses, it's probably going to look ugly?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this is my least confident of all the female. Like, I'd actually, if I had to go straight up, take Cachoeira over Mora. I think I need close to that plus 300. I wouldn't go much below that. But she can grapple. And, Wang Song was not as impressive in her recent fights as she was with the big knockout against Victoria Leonardo. Got taken down and subbed by Gabriela Fernandez. Her takedown, or I'm sorry, she got knocked down and subbed by Gabriela Fernandez, which is just a crazy sentence because who's Gabriela Fernandez? Technically 100% takedown defense, hasn't fought great grapplers really so far. Not that Moore is a great grappler. She also violates my version of Ronda nickname betting rule, but at plus 300, I'm going to take a flyer on it. But it's a fight that odds makers think is likely to go to a decision. When you grapple, you win the rounds a little bit more clearly than you do when you're striking, assuming you actually can consolidate those takedowns and hold her there. So don't love this one. It was a quarter unit bet for me, but at plus 300, I'm going to take a little flyer.
Since she's Brazilian, I really believe it's pronounced Honda, like the car. The R is likely silent. So I don't know if that helps or hurts your case for supporting her this weekend. But yeah, I think we can do a slightly different pronunciation for the Brazilian Rondas as opposed to the Russian and American Rondas. Third women's fight in a row here from an underdog perspective. Bruna Brazil fighting Ketlin Souza in the women's strawweight division. Brazil is with the Fighting Nerds now. She's looked better since moving over to that team. Is the bigger fighter, 3 inches taller, 2 inch reach advantage. She's the better control rate grappler, 57% of her positions, just 28% for Catlin Souza. Souza's the more damaging striker, probably the more voluminous striker as well. Brazil a little bit more calculated in terms of picking her shots. But I do expect a very close and competitive fight here. There's really not a ton to say beyond that. Souza did lose splits to both Angela Hill and Piera Rodriguez. You look at the Rodriguez fight, there's almost no argument for even giving her a 29-28 there. It was closer to 30-27 Rodriguez than 29-28 Souza. But in terms of the luck ratings, does have the split loss to Hill and Rodriguez on there. So I was a little surprised to see you on Brazil, considering if you look at pure luck ratings, it might be Souza who's undervalued, but I make Brazil about plus 130. I like her at current prices of plus 140 or higher. Not a big bet on any of these three fights for me. Not a bet at all on the Kong Wang fight, but not a huge bet on either Cachoeira or Bruna Brazil. Billy, where do you kind of rank this one among the three fights in terms of confidence level?
This is actually my favorite. I mean, easy to say when she's plus 130 and the other one's like plus
Sure.
300. But I think Bruna Brazil should be favored. She has looked much better with the Fighting Nerds. I kind of ignored those split decisions just because I thought they were both pretty clearly should have been unanimous against Ketlin Souza.
I agree.
I don't think she's that great. I mean, she needed a decision to beat Marnik Mann, who is the weirdest. why they put her in the UFC. I have no idea. Like she was just looked like a random soccer mom who for some reason got called up. The same Marnik man that Bruno Brazil knocked out with a head kick and took down a bunch of times on the Contender Series. And Ketlin Souza needed a decision. MMA math doesn't work that way. I'm not saying that. But Ketlin Souza's been taken down 9 times in her last 2 fights, and Bruno Brazil can grapple and seems to have. I don't know how much her skills have leveled up with the fighting nerds, but she seems to be much better at like game planning and
Hmm.
taking the correct path to a
Yeah.
win, which is actually, I think, the best part of the fighting nerds camp as a whole. Like, I don't think they're really developing guys or girls in this case into elite technicians, but they come in with a plan. It's usually what I would assume is the best plan. And they're taking these fighters who have a well-developed game. They're not building guys from the ground up, but they're taking these fighters with a well-developed game and figuring out the best way to utilize that in the fight that's in front of them. And it's super obvious what that should be here for Bruno Brazil. So at plus money, I think she should actually be favored here. So anything plus money for me is a steal. Also, a great DFS play because if she does win, it will be a lot of takedowns. Hell, she could lose and get a lot of takedowns, and because she's an underdog and cheap, still not a bad play. So, yeah, I'm all in on Bruno Brazil, kind of across every speculative venture I can get her this week.
Light heavyweight bout between Dustin Jacoby, Justin Jacoby. It's always want to flip those two letters for some reason. The J on the last name with the Dustin first name, just
Yeah,
like my brain just transposes it to the first name. Dustin Jacoby going against Julius Walker. Walker, 11 years younger here. Jacoby, significantly more fight experience, both in terms of MMA and also his kickboxing career. He has 17 UFC bouts. Walker, just 8 MMA bouts. So vastly more experience for Jacoby, the much more educated striker. We've only seen 43% striking defense from Walker, so he's very hittable. But he does have the grappling upside here, and frankly, he's the better, more explosive athlete. He's a good fast switch athlete. I think he's going to continue to improve from one fight to the next. Saw him aggressively wrestle Rafael Cerqueira in his last fight. Didn't end up finishing that fight. Did, though, like to see him proactively grappling there. Now, Jacoby does have good takedown defense. I just think the age is an issue. And here's the thing that really gets me, Billy. Not only did Jacoby take this fight on short notice in place of Sadi Baldiev, Jacoby was in Australia last weekend, cornering Cody Brundage. Dude flew to
didn't see that.
Australia in the middle of training camp, a short notice training camp, flew back while cutting weight. You're talking about 24 hours on planes over the past week. Like, going against the guy who's 11 years younger, yes, clear striking advantage. Yes, he can knock Walker out. In fact, I show pretty good value on the fight to end inside the distance. I make that about minus 260. You can bet it at minus 160. I do think Jacoby is the likelier finisher, but Walker, I think, could potentially drown him with pace, especially if Jacoby has not been on a full camp here and he's flown back and forth to Australia in the past month. I think Walker, as the younger guy, could potentially push a face, force a lot of cage pushing, and maybe tire Jacoby out for the back half of this fight. So may get a better live number on Walker than you do pre-fight, but I do like Julius Walker. I make him about plus 127, would bet plus 155, down to plus 135. Also look for a live bet. And then the inside the distance prop, I would take up to around minus 220. So Billy, between the underdog Walker and the inside the distance prop there, which of those two lines at about plus 155 and minus 160 do you prefer, if at all? And do you get the angle for a Walker live bet as well?
Yeah, 100% on the live bet angle. I like the underdog shot here too. I didn't quite get there myself, but with you laying it out, and I didn't realize he was in Brundage's corner, so that is interesting. I will say I don't think he cuts a ton of weight. He was a middleweight in his original UFC run, and then when he first went to kickboxing, not that, that was a long time ago, like 15 years at this point for him. So he might have put on some weight, but I don't think he's a guy who like has a hard time making 205. I think he's a guy who probably could make 185, but has correctly looked around at the talent pool at 185 and 205 and gone, yeah, no, I'll go against these bigger guys, which is correct because there's not that many 205 or heavyweights who are like in shape and athletic at that size. One of those who is in shape and athletic at that size is former basketball player Julius Walker, who somehow taught to wrestle. Pretty clear path, I think. Will be a little bit scary on the feet while Jacoby's, throwing those haymakers because he hits real hard. But I'm with you. I like Jacoby as underdog. Another guy, underdog in DFS who can get a lot of takedowns, I think that's where most of my exposure will be.
Walker really showing off the physique this week. He was really hyped about
Yeah.
his body and the transformation he's made physically, and he was excited to get under some UFC production lights to take some new fighter photos. But yeah, dude looks absolutely shredded. Clearly the better, faster athlete. We'll see if he's able to push a pace at all on Jacoby in this fight. John Matsumoto against Fareed Basharat. Last fight we're going to talk about here from an underdog perspective. We will get back to the heavyweight bout when we talk about the best bets, which Billy and I will end up being on opposite sides of. But Matsumoto against Basharat, one of the better fights on the card. Matsumoto 17-1, Basharat 14-0. Basharat the slightly better strike differential, zero point 0.7 to zero point 0.3 per minute at distance. The difference in the control rate, though, nearly double, 85% control rate for Basharat, 43% for Matsumoto. Matsumoto also only a 51% takedown defense rate, and Basharat attempts about one takedown per minute at distance. So he's going to get aggressively grappled here. If he's able to scramble back up, he could potentially put a pace on Basharat, land more volume of strikes across 25 minutes or across 15 minutes, and end up taking a decision. He's just not as technical. Matsumoto much more aggressive than Basharat. Basharat much more measured defensively. 60% striking defense versus 48%. I think Matsumoto is going to land the more damaging strikes. I just think Basharat is going to be more efficient, mix in the takedowns, and potentially end up taking a close split decision. But the pricing, Matsumoto plus 220. I make him I project him around plus 220. You can get him as high as plus 250, I believe. Would take him down to plus 235. And then the point spread as well, plus 3.5 at minus 140. Have a difficult time seeing Matsumoto coming out of this fight without winning a round. And of the two, I think I prefer him from a finishing perspective. So Matsumoto on the point spread, plus 3.5, minus 140. And then the Matsumoto on the money line down to plus 235. Pretty big number on this ends inside the distance as well. I think I align with the market, though. I believe it's around plus 250 to end by finish. Billy, Matsumoto Basharat, maybe the most intriguing fight on a card, just in terms of skill sets of these guys, potential projectable future. I would imagine we'll see one of these guys in a title fight some point down the line. So how do you view this one? Which side of the fight do you like? Do you agree or disagree with the point spread?
I agree in theory on the point spread. I don't like minus 140
Mm-hmm.
given what the money line is. It just feels like at that point you should just suck it up and bet the money line. Like,
Mm-hmm.
not that it doesn't work that way, right? Like, a guy can win the point spread even at a bad price and you still cash your ticket. Like, I understand that. It just feels too like the book is on to that angle, I guess is the best way to put that. Is DraftKings realizes how this is likely to go. One thing I find really interesting is Matsumoto on the finish only is plus 175, which
Mm,
is really surprising to me.
good one.
I did not look into that until you were speaking about this now, and you said he's the better finisher. I'm like, yeah, damn right he is. And then I looked it up, and that's a wide line. So
Yeah, I
that
like
might
that one.
be, yeah, that's probably what I'm going to do with this one. I do like Matsumoto here. I don't know how much of it is like wish casting because in my opinion, a lot more fun than Fareed Basharat,
Mm-hmm.
who's very good. He's just not like super interesting. Where Matsumoto can, he's a good time, right? Like he's going to get hit, as you pointed out, 43% or 48% striking defense, throws a lot, throws hard, doesn't always land, doesn't really care. Just that's always fun to watch. So I'm hoping for Matsumoto, but I do like that finish only at close to 2-1.
Yeah, Matsumoto is like Josh Van, Bashot is like watching a worse Volkanovski. Like it's just very technical and like lots of feints and movement, but like ultimately it's not the most entertaining product. It's a championship level skill set, and
Mhm.
oftentimes championship level fighters aren't very risk. They're very risk averse, and Bashot is pretty risk averse. Hence the striking defense, hence all the takedown attempts. So yeah, I completely agree. Matsumoto, the much more fun fighter, certainly will be the one to root for if you're looking forward to future entertaining fights. If he's able to deny the takedowns, though, and end up scrambling repeatedly, I do think he can land more
Yeah.
damage of strikes. So, yeah, this is really going to come down to the takedown, not only to takedown defense, but more so his scrambling ability, because I do expect him to get taken down. It's just whether he gets up. If you're on Twitter, we have a great new feature. If you see a bet from any of your favorite action experts or anyone on gambling Twitter, you can now tag at Playbook and tell our bot to build you a bet slip at a book of your choice. It will build it out for you with a quick slip link that opens right up to your sportsbook. So keep an eye out for our new tool at Playbook on Twitter. Let's talk about our favorite fights from a prop perspective this weekend. We did already address the Cachoeira and Segula under. There's a couple of same game parlays that I like with bigger favorites. The first, Mikel Oleksiejczuk against Marc-Andre Barrio. Now, I've mentioned that McCall is my most off bet on fighter since I've been doing and handicapping this sport publicly. He looks like a different guy since he moved to Team Fighting Nerds. They've instilled some grappling in him, but also, as Billy has pointed out, just given him a little bit more of a game plan, caused him to be a little bit more measured. He's still knocking dudes out. In round one, though, he has 9 UFC wins, 8 have come by round one KO. The pricing, though, is starting to reflect the improvements he's made. This is a guy, his final 3 losses before moving to Fighting Nerds, plus 135 against Michel Pereira, plus 260 against Kevin Holland, plus 265 against Shara Bullet. He's then minus 180 against Cedric Dumas, minus 225 against GM3, and now he's minus 500 against Marc-Andre Barrio, and I think Barrio is a tougher matchup for him than GM3. Barrio, if he's able to survive that first round, good volume of strikes, probably better cardio than Oleksiejczuk as well. But I do think Barrio is on the back nine of his career too. 6-9-1 in the promotion. I believe he has lost 4 or 5, knocked out in 2 of those. There's just such a drastic speed differential between these two. McCall is going to be so much quicker early. The small cage of the apex helps him to close down room on opponents. He's 5 years younger, and he's going to hit the body and try to put MAB away. So the under 1.5 with McCall Oleksiejczuk is around minus 118 to minus 125, I believe, on DraftKings. I'm good with that. Anywhere up to about minus 135 on Oleksiejczuk and the under 1.5 rounds. You could also mix in the knockout prop with that, get it closer to even money. But I think at some point, considering he's training with the Fighting Nerds, he may look for a club and sub or find a way to get his first submission, in the UFC. So definitely would be careful if it's not that big of a price adjustment. Adding in the knockout prop, would rather just take the safer route. Oleksiejczuk and under 1.5 is around minus 125. And then you could look for a live bet on Barrio after round 1 if he's still there. Billy, how did you break this one down? Any bets for you on Oleksiejczuk against Marc-Andre Barrio?
Yeah, so since I was on MMA Fighting's No Bets Barred last week, I restarted the Climb project. Talked about that before. It's minus 500-ish bets. If you hit like 25 of them, you turn $100 to 30 grand or something crazy, as long as you're able to roll it over every time. And Mikhail is my Climb this week. I got him when he's minus 425. To your point about the game plan, like, yeah, he gone to Fighting Nerds and they've helped him with the game plan. But the correct plan for him is to be really aggressive and punch dudes in the face until they fall down, because that's what he's really good at. And they've given him the freedom and the tools to just do that better. Which sometimes it's that simple, right? If you're big and fast and have good power for the division, he's a former light heavyweight, just go punch guys until they fall down. And Marc-Andre Barriault is really good at getting punched in the face and falling down. Also, another shout out to Jed Meshew, pointed out to me when we were talking about it, Powerbar is 0-7 when listed as an underdog in the UFC. So sportsbooks have him right, not pulling some upsets here. I think McCall gets this pretty easy. It's my Climb, and then also we'll just have probably all of my DraftKings lineups. Mahal is 9,100. The next guy you're going to talk about is, I believe, $600 more expensive with less early upside, in my opinion. So I think McCall is just a great DFS play.
Yeah, McCall, a parlay piece for me as well, up to a minus 500. Just view him as a very safe play this week. Oh, the other thing Fighting Nerds is giving him is a beach body. Just moving down to Brazil, dude is getting absolutely shredded and looks in great shape. He previously competed at 205, moved down to middleweight. Seems like there's a chance that, the body could make 170 if he really pushed it to. Not saying it would be a good move for him, but not a huge middleweight, and now getting absolutely shredded down at 185. So liking to see, how serious he's taking his career. The confidence certainly growing. Expecting another relatively quick finish for him on Saturday before getting a step up in competition. Go ahead.
I say, before we move on to the next one, real quick on that topic, I would encourage our listeners to do some research on what sports supplements are available over the counter in Brazil versus other places in the world. I just throwing that out there. If we start seeing guys move to Brazil and look shredded, there's probably
100%. No, that some supplements certainly incorporated into the diet, I would imagine as well. And another dude who looks like he's on some supplements, but those supplements Could be adrenaline and the rage virus from 28 days later. That's Daniil Jonchenko, one of the angriest fighters I've ever seen. Dude, just it looks like John Wick immediately after his dog was killed when the opening bell hits. I don't know why this man is so angry, but he wants to punch a hole through the chest of all of his opponents. He won last season of The Ultimate Fighter, one of the most aggressive starters I've ever seen. He's also, though, won by round four finish regionally. You know, this is not necessarily a dude who gasses himself out trying to finish early. He can potentially sustain his cardio later on into the fight. I know it looked like in that Ultimate Fighter finale, he was starting to gas after about 7 minutes, but I think he's a guy who, like Dricus du Plessis, is going to look tired but continue to fight and push forward. Just 24 years old still. He's 11 years younger than Alex Morono. Morono has been a D plus athlete, you know, largely for the majority of his UFC career, but like a B plus or A minus technically, which is why he's able to have so much success. He's actually like it's enjoyable. It's been enjoyable to watch him because it feels like if I had trained MMA for 20 years of my life, that's what I would look like in the UFC. You know, like I'm not a supreme athlete by any means, but if I knew all the technical know-hows of fighting and could take a punch, Alex Morono is probably the upside for most of us watching or listening to this podcast in terms of, you know, our athletic performance in the UFC. So I do think though Morono looking pretty shot. He's lost three straight. He's lost 5 of 7. Was KO'd in 2 of those fights, including last March against Carlos Leal. He does have the grappling advantage here. If he's able to get the fight to the ground, he can finish the fight with submissions, and he's pretty good at surviving. Even though that fight against Leal, the ref let him take like 100 shots up against the fence, he never ultimately went down. But I think Donchenko is going to be all over this dude, especially in the small cage. And it's the same play as I'm making for the Oleksiejczuk fight, except to get a slightly better price. Donchenko in the under 1.5 rounds, you can get as good as minus 109. His round one KO prop is plus 165, but he does have a rear naked club on his record, or rear naked choke on his record. So club and slub, you know, absolutely possible. Hence taking the same game parlay as opposed to the knockout prop. So Donchenko in under 1.5 minus 109, Oleksiejczuk in under 1.5 minus 125. Billy, do you view this fight similarly to me? Do you like Donchenko to finish this thing the first half?
Yeah, 100%. I loved your take on Alex Morono's All of Us. Every time I watch Alex Morono fight, I've said this before in various places. I think, man, I really should have just joined a big team when I was like 2-0 or 3-0 at 21 years old, and I would be Alex Morono. Like, we'd be fighting to a split decision this weekend if if I had just joined, you know, there was no fighting nerds in 2010 or whatever. But like, yeah, he's a fine athlete by like regular dude standards, right? He shows up at your BJJ gym or your Powerhouse Fitness or whatever. He's going to be one of the more athletic dudes there, but he's not, you know, elite by any stretch in that matter. So 100% agree with you on that take. Not that anyone comes here for my geopolitics take, but Donchenko is Ukrainian. I wonder if we could chart his fast starts to the Russian invasion of his homeland and see if there's any correlation there. You said you
That's
don't know
fair.
why he's so you said you don't know why he's so angry. That'd be my first guess. That's where I'd start. At the very least, don't know what else is going on in his personal life, but I'd be, you know, a little worked up about that. So agree with you on your take. He is another one where, in theory, I like him for DFS. There's not enough cheap plays to get both him and Alexei Jacek. And I think Dunchenko's a little bit worse of a play and more expensive. So I'm kind of defaulting to McCall there. But both guys, if you can get to them in DFS, if you have the cheap plays you like, I think are really solid. And yeah, I agree with all of your technical points as well.
In terms of DFS scoring, aside from not getting the volume of strikes across 5 minutes, is there any difference in scoring between getting a knockout at 1 second of round one and 4:59 of round one?
So the first minute of round one, they give a bonus, and then
Okay.
after that, it's just by round. I have long said there needs to be some kind of formula for like minutes or seconds remaining in a fight, so you're not effectively punished for getting a knockout at 101. Because I've had some big swings, and some in my favor, but you never remember those. When a knockout happened at like 102 instead of 59 seconds, where I would have wanted it then to go 3.5 more minutes because of the volume. So that's tricky. I would really like it if they refined that. They didn't always have the first minute bonus, which has really helped though, because a guy getting a 17-second knockout and not making the optimal lineup is horrible. Now you're seeing a guy get a knockout in a minute and five, and someone else who got a knockout at 4:55 scores way better because they had more time, which is frustrating, but not as bad as it used to be. So, yeah, you almost don't want that. There's that dead zone of like minutes 1 through 3, which is like somehow the worst time to finish a fight for
Yeah,
DFS.
I think Donchenko, I think they could both finish in the first minute actually, but I do think Donchenko is going to land more volume than McCall if
Mhm.
it ends up going 5 minutes. Just not even because of the fighter themselves, but their opponent. I think Morono is just going to take more damage of the two. So
Before getting finished.
yeah,
Yeah,
potentially.
that's probably smart.
But he's also more expensive, right? He's like $600 more expensive. He's a steeper favorite, so that may even
Right.
things out. Let's talk about some Super Bowl crossword props before we get into our best bets for this weekend, because DraftKings did hang about 4 or 5 lines that caught Billy and my attention. We thought we'd discuss them briefly before we get out of here. So the first being the total takedowns in the main event, Bautista and Oliveira, against the touchdowns in the Super Bowl. So, Billy, you're part of our predictive analytics team. How many touchdowns are we projecting in the Super Bowl first? And then compare that to your analysis in the main event, because you like touchdowns in the Super Bowl minus 150 over main event takedowns.
Yeah, the median is about five, which is about right, I would say. We're just going off the total there. You don't need to do too much work to figure
Sure.
out. Right. It's a little bit over five, depending on your how you break those down. I don't think Bautista goes crazy with the takedowns here, and I don't think Oliveira is going to land any. So five is pretty high for Mario Bautista. As you pointed out, we haven't seen him in a 5 round fight, which is the one thing that gives me a little bit of a pause. But the most he's ever landed in a fight was four against Jay Perrin, and I think Loke Dog's takedown defense is much better than whoever Jay Perrin was, because I don't even remember that being a real human who fought in the UFC. And again, if we don't get any out of Oliveira, or even if we just get like one, I don't see how we go over five here. So will be a fun sweat if they finish with, four total and we're watching the Super Bowl and there's 3 touchdowns and 5 field goals or something. But I will note before we talk about all of these, DraftKings has tie as an option on all of
Mhm.
these, which means if they do tie and you didn't take tie, it is a loss, not a push. So that changes the calculus a little bit on all of these.
Yes, exactly. Minus 150 for touchdowns, plus 190 for takedowns, plus 700 for a tie in that market.
The tie is
Also,
actually intriguing there at plus 700, but
yeah, I thought Ty was also intriguing potentially in Sam Darnold passing touchdowns versus takedowns in Almeida versus Kuniev. Now, this is a fight we're going to get to in our best bet section. You like Jelton Almeida in this fight. My question is, how many takedowns do you see him getting? Because Kuniev does have good takedown defense. Jelton, though, does tend to get them against everyone. I believe he had 7 in his last fight. So getting plus 110 on total takedowns against Sam Darnold. Passing touchdowns, which you would expect at most to be around 3, likelier to be at 2. How many takedowns do you see Almeida getting against Kuniev?
yeah, so this one I actually did check into our projection sheet. Sean Kerner has the median, or the mean, I guess, not median, for Darnold at 1.8 passing touchdowns. Seahawks were like one of the highest rush rate over expectations or lowest pass rate over expectations team in the league. They prefer to run it in. And so I think if you get two with Almeida, you're getting at least a tie, which doesn't help us. But Kuniev got taken down twice by Curtis Blades in his last fight, and Almeida just ragdolled Curtis Blades for 9 takedowns in a round before getting knocked out. But if he gets 9 takedowns and gets knocked out here, you're winning this bet. Sam Darnold ain't throwing 9 passing touchdowns, and Kuniev can grapple a little bit too. So I don't expect Kuniev to take down Jailton Almeida. I don't expect anyone to take down Jailton Almeida, but he might throw you a weird one in there or something that you or I might deem a reversal, get scored a takedown, which I think can help. And we know Jailton, he's not going to try to finish you. He's not going to throw any punches, and he's not going to go for submission unless it's obvious. I'm hoping he's changed that a little bit, which we'll talk about in a minute. But if it goes 3 rounds, you think he gets at least 3 takedowns. Darnold probably two is the likeliest option, and we're getting plus money on this side of it. I know you are targeting the same takedown prop for this one, right? For your
Yeah, so I'm going with total takedowns in Almeida Kuniev at minus 115. You're getting plus 110. The tie is plus 330. You're going with plus 110 against Sam Darnold passing touchdowns. I'm going with minus 115 against Drake May touchdowns. We're hitting both quarterbacks here.
Yeah.
May under 1.5 touchdowns is my favorite Super Bowl prop, regardless of projections. I do think the injury factor potentially lingering over him. The Patriots, in my opinion, may try to run the ball a little bit more inside the 10, inside the red zone in this game. And I think Almeida, even though I like the other side of this fight, and we'll get to that in a second, I still think Almeida is landing 2 or 3 takedowns in this matchup. So Kuniev's ability to scramble up is going to prove huge, but the athleticism, the explosiveness early, I still think Almeida ends up getting on top of him and getting this fight to the ground at
Yeah.
least twice. So two takedowns for me. I have the under 1.5 for May in the Super Bowl at -130. I think two covers one more often than not, and getting -115 I think is a pretty solid number. If that was the same number as the passing touchdown prop, -130, I think it would have been priced a little bit more appropriately. Obviously, you have the tie factor in there, around +330 as well. Yeah, +330 for May. Takedowns tied, +330 for Darnold. Takedowns tied in Almeida Kuniev. Both of us, though, like the takedown prop, +110 for Billy, plus or -115 for me, and then Billy also going with -150 touchdowns in Super Bowl over takedowns in Bautista Oliveira. So that was a fun little sidetrack on our adventure as we get towards our best and final bets here. But wanted to toss
Real
out some
quick
Super
before
Bowl
you go
props.
on,
Go ahead, Billy.
I just looked it up while you were talking. Kerner has Drake May passing touchdowns 1.3 median, so more likely to finish at 1 than 2, which would almost certainly cash your bet. And then Darnold at 1.7, so that's actually adjusted down since I made that bet. So yeah, that definitely supports your argument on the under 1.5 and also on this cross sport prop.
Yeah, -130 on May under 1.5 touchdowns. 1.3 projected, probably fair line. There's not technically an edge there, but that -115 for Almeida and Kuniev takedowns, yeah, I'm telling you, if Almeida hits two, I think we win it. So I think May's finishing with one passing touchdown this weekend. Maybe it finishes 2-2, but yeah, I like May to get one passing TD this
And
weekend.
the upside on Almeida, he could easily get 7 or 8. Neither of these quarterbacks are throwing 8 passing touchdowns, right? So like, there one of them has what feels like almost uncapped upside, where the other one, what's the ceiling? 3, maybe 4 in a wild game. So
Correct. Yeah, the range of outcomes obviously much wider for the takedowns, but also you could win the bet on Saturday essentially. If he gets,
right.
if he gets 5, 6, 7, you've won, right? You don't have to sweat it. So, yeah, that's a very good point being made. The upside of the takedowns is able to put the bet away before it's even competitive. Let's move on to our best and final bets for this weekend's card. I am against Billy. We'll talk about that Almeida and Kuniev fight because I am against Billy on this heavyweight matchup, but I do think you'll get a better price on Kuniev live after round one. So I'm not taking a huge free pre-fight position. Now, Kuniev has gotten bet down. He was as high as +200 earlier in the week. Jelton has the 3-inch reach advantage, always starts fast against opponents. It seems to be the case that the longer he has to wrestle these heavyweights and muscle them around, it's starting to take a toll on his cardio. And also, he does not have the best shin. Getting finished in the way he did by Curtis Blades was extremely awkward. Just eating, hammer fists from like the bottom clinch against the fence, just extremely awkward. Now, cardio, I think Kuniev, I'd prefer it normally. Jelton is also taking this fight on short notice, just 3 weeks notice in place of Ryan Spann. So I do think the longer this fight goes, the better it ultimately looks for Kuniev. So small pre-fight position for me on Kuniev. Live after round one, maybe the best price. Round two +850, round three 12-1, I think are interesting stabs as well. But Billy, you expect Almeida to have early success, as do I. Where do you like Jelton's pre-fight price to? And then any other props you're considering? Do you like a submission prop, round one prop, or any ways you think he wins this fight more consistently than others?
Yeah, Jailton is the next in what I'm hoping is not a recurring series on this podcast, that I'm calling the Please Punch special, where if you just punch a little bit. It was Don Marfan last week, he came through for us. Just punch a little. Like, I don't need you to finish guys on the ground. I don't need you to go crazy. But he had one round against was it Pavlovich he just lost to? Volkov, one of the guys in
Volkov.
the division. Volkov, that split decision. He attempted zero significant strikes,
Hmm.
not a single one. And literally, like, probably three would have won him that fight in that round. I'm hoping somebody told him, right? Like, I don't speak Portuguese, so it's not going to be me, but somebody please tell him, just throw any punches and you're going to win almost every fight. And that is the case here. He's a much better grappler than Kuniev. Again, transitive property of wrestling doesn't totally work this way, but Almeida looked like, Dan Gable going against Curtis Blades, who pretty easily wrestled Kuniev. So, you apply that. I'm going out on a limb here because we have never seen him be that aggressive against decent dudes on the ground. But if he is, he should win this very easily. I also very much like your Kuniev live angle. If we can get him to the point where it's like an arb bet for me, where he's north of plus 150, because I'm looking at minus 150 as a
He
target on
would be.
Almeida.
If he gets dominated on the ground in round one, he will be, yeah.
It might be plus 400 if he gets
Yeah.
dominated the way that Almeida should. So I like that angle just because I'm gonna be so mad if I'm holding, Almeida minus 150 with no live bet and it goes to some crazy decision because he chose not to punch. But yeah, this is the please punch special of the week. Just throw any strikes on the ground and this will look really easy
Yeah,
enough to
we've
run
seen
out.
Jelton has really powerful hammer fists when he lets them go.
Yeah.
He just doesn't. I would caution against the 10-8 live bet. Make sure Kuniev did not get 10-8'd, in round one. If Almeida does actually throw strikes, if he has a deep submission attempt that doesn't end up finishing, just make sure Kuniev is not down 10-8 after round one, if you're going to enter with a live bet.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, that Volkov fight, Almeida 10:47 of control time, landed 7 takedowns, just 9 significant strikes across 15 minutes. Volkov had 24 significant strikes, I believe all of which were from bottom, and he ended up winning the split decision. But Almeida pre-fight, Kuniev live, probably the best way to go about playing the heavyweight tilt on Saturday's card. My best bet for this weekend, Moon Gafarov against Jakub Wiklach. Wiklach off of a controversial win, split win over Patchy Mix. A lot of people thought Mix won that fight. Mix has now been cut by the UFC. We did bet Wiklach in that fight. He is the bigger man, 3 inches taller, 4 inch reach advantage. Probably, or not probably, he is the better grappler as well. But he's a very, very public underdog this week. Hence, why Gafarov is my best bet. Around 70% of the public picking Wiklach to win this fight. His implied odds closer to 44%. This is the whole reason I do my process, is to identify fights exactly like this, where the public is picking a fighter who is clearly an underdog and picking them at a rate 15, 20% above expectation to win the fight. This looks like a fairly binary matchup, either Wiklach on the mat or Gafarov on the feet. And in the clinch, I make Gafarov about minus 200. I expect him to land substantially more damage. You can take him at around minus 135, and I'd bet that all the way up to minus 185. This fight also opened as a pick 'em. Gafarov has moved out to minus 140, so clearly seems like money is piled in on his side. Last one to mention, the model likes the over that goes to decision here. This is, to me, a pretty binary fight, so I don't know if I can agree with that and end up putting money on it, considering I do think Gavrov could find or Wiklach could find the submission on the mat, and Gavrov could absolutely find the knockout on the feet, given the binary nature of the stylistic matchup. Billy, any bets for you in Gavrov, Wiklach? I know you were looking at the underdog early in the week. Are you going to end up firing?
Yeah, I'm not super convinced on it. Basically, I just don't know how good Patchy Mix is anymore
Mm-hmm.
because if he's that good coming in as a big underdog and being competitive with Patchy Mix in your first UFC uh outing, and it was on relatively short notice for Wicklax. He was kind of a late direct signing to the promotion. Not like days, but not a full training camp. That's super impressive if Patchy Mix is still Patchy Mix. If Patchy Mix is just washed because he really didn't look good, then we don't really know what we have in Wicklax here. And I can't answer that because Patchy Mix fight in Risen is not until March. So we don't really know if he's got anything left in the tank because he lost to Bautista and Wicklax in his UFC fight, no shame in that. But then if you come out and lose to Kiyomo Akimoto and look bad there, then it's probably because Patchy's washed. So I am holding off for that reason. I do lean Wicklax. I think he's exciting and can do a lot of good things. But again, if you beat like a old washed Patchy Mix, I can't give you too much credit for that. If you beat a Patchy Mix who still got something, he's only 32. That's a different story.
Still about 50 minutes away from weigh-ins, but final two fights in this card that are scheduled that we did not discuss as of yet. Javid Bashrat has a change of opponent. He was supposed to fight Said Nurmagomedov. I know you were looking forward to that fight. He's instead going to fight Yanni Vasquez, who you sent me the clip of last night, most famous for getting both triangled and then having his arm broken against Edgar Chairez in a Fury FC bout, for title, Fury FC title bout, the fourth round of the bout. Absolutely horrifying situation where he was basically tapping out and then an armbar still applied and held on to him for an additional 30 seconds. I looked at the video. The clock on the video was a full 30 seconds where the ref is standing over him, not stopping the fight, even though he's tapping out with his feet. He's passed out from the choke. Like, one of the worst finishing sequences you've ever seen to a fight. But he went 4-0, 5-0 after that awful loss and has found his way into the UFC. I really don't know much about him as a fighter. I haven't watched any of his tape. Do you have any thoughts on Yanni Vasquez and his chances against Javid Bashrat?
Yeah, I posted that clip in the Action Discord fight channel too. If anyone's interested, I would recommend you don't watch it. That's my personal feeling. I told you last night, Sean, but my greatest fear anytime I'm grappling is that I pass out to a choke and then someone breaks one of my limbs. Because you can pass out to a choke, you just wake up a few seconds later. It's really not a huge deal. Also, don't try that at home. But broadly speaking, it's not that huge of a deal. But if then while you're asleep, a guy tears your arm off and the ref just stands there doing nothing, that would suck. I would not like that to happen.
Yeah, hell of a way to wake up.
Well, he woke up while his arm was being broken,
yes.
And then the ref saw him tap again.
He was tapping with his leg first, passed out, and then woke up and started tapping with his other arm. Yeah, that was ugly.
Just horrible. I'm not betting this one, but Basharat is 8,300 on DraftKings DFS because he was priced as basically a pick 'em against Said Nurmagomedov. Now he has the same money line odds as Donchenko, roughly around -700. So he's a free square in DFS. If you needed me to tell you that, you probably aren't winning too many DFS contests. But yeah, I'm trying to beat people with my other five this week because a -700 favorite price like a pick 'em is, you kind of just have to take that and try to win elsewhere.
Is there an argument, since Javid is not much of a finisher, and is there an argument because people are going to be flocking to him at 8,300 in a matchup where he's now a humongous favorite? Is there an argument to trying to go against them in DFS? Or is he probably just going to be underweight anyway?
There's always that argument. He lands a lot of significant strikes per minute, so even if he doesn't finish at his price, he'll probably make the optimal in a win. If you're doing that, you have to then play Vasquez, though, because collectively they will price Vasquez fairly. Those still aren't out when we're recording. They'll price Vasquez as a +500 or so underdog. So the collective price of the two of them combined, usually they make that 16,200 for every fight. It will be way lower on this one. So yeah, if you want to get contrarian, great, fade Basharat, but you absolutely have to play Vasquez because whoever wins this fight is winning at a much cheaper price than it should be. It's hard to see how they win and then don't make the optimal lineup. So yeah, if you want to get crazy, I'll probably do that in one GPP lineup just for fun. But yeah, you got to play this fight, I should say, at a minimum. Most of it should be Basharat.
Last question for DFS purpose. Do you find when because this is a very short notice replacement, this is a day before the fight replacement. Do you find when there's very late notice replacements, obviously they're always big underdogs like this, but do you think these guys tend to be underowned because lineups are already built out from people from earlier in the week?
I think it will be this one because DraftKings still hasn't added him to the player pool. I think this actually broke late Wednesday that this change has happened, but DraftKings has taken their time for whatever reason. So there'll be a little bit of that. I'm not sure how much. I will say Vasquez is coming up from flyweight. The Chairez is a flyweight. That's a flyweight title. So he's coming up a weight class, which helps a little bit. But if you want to get real crazy, what are the odds that this one gets lost on day of when a guy just showed up 3 days ago and might not have had a Nevada license and had to make weight? That's, I guess, the one justification I could see for canceling or for fading it is literally betting on it to be canceled after a lock, which is more likely in this fight than it is in other ones. The saving grace there is I think it's fairly early on the card, so hopefully they would tell us. But man, I swear sometimes they wait until the the event officially starts and then tell us that a dude got hit by a car earlier that day and can't fight, and you're like, well, could have told us that an hour ago. But
yeah, it's almost like they're excited to save it as the news item to leave off the card. They're like, we're not going to delay it. We're just going to start early and talk about this fight that got canceled and screw over everybody who locked lineups. Yeah, that has not been fun in the past. but still not as bad as what was it, Josh Emmers, who didn't leave the locker room, or there was a fighter who just straight up did not come out of the locker room while somebody else was waiting in the cage for them.
Not it was Rose against Blanchfield. Or not Rose, Macy Barber against
There was
Blanchfield.
that one. There was also there was a fighter who was retiring, who was coming out for his last fight. He was already in the cage. He's like a roofer or something as well. I'm blanking on the name. I know somebody watching this is screaming the guy's
Oh,
name
I don't remember that one.
at the screen. But yeah, he was already in the cage and was ready to go. And they ended up saying the fighter in the back like wouldn't come out. It might. I feel like it wasn't Jabal Emmers. I think it was somebody else. Well, we'll have to look that one up, figure it out. One more fight of the card we didn't get to yet. This was also a late booking. Nikolai Veretennikov. Everybody calls him Veretnikov. I've called him Veretnikov in the past. It's Veretennikov. It's actually like very easy to pronounce it if you just look at the name. I think everybody's just super lazy with it. Nikolai Veretennikov against Nico Price. This is probably going to be a similar play for me as the Donchenko and the Oleksiejczuk plays. I'm probably going to try to play. We don't have many odds out for this yet, but I'm probably going to try to play Veretennikov in the under 1.5 rounds and get around minus 125 or better. I'm not sure what the odds are, but I think Nico Price is just done physically. I know he survived to a decision in his last fight. Veretennikov actually hits pretty hard. He's faced a number of grapplers who have put him on his back. It's probably not going to happen here. I think he ends up hurting and finishing Price relatively quickly. We just don't have the prop bets out in order to place that bet yet. Billy, did you have any read for this fight? Any bets you're planning on making, even though it's still a bit early?
Yeah, I haven't looked into it a ton. I might come up with something. I broadly agree with you, but Price seems weirdly hard to finish. And I could also see Veretennikov doing the grappling, which was probably like smart for him and is the straightest path to a victory, but might also extend the fight beyond your prop. So I'll look into it a little bit more, but probably will pass on this one.
That'll do it for our UFC betting preview. You can find more UFC betting content from both Billy and myself on actionnetwork.com and in the Action Network app. And if you'd like to instantly tail sub the bets that we discussed on today's show, look for the quick sub links both in the podcast and video description or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and sign up for Action Pro for immediate access to expert picks and analysis. Best of luck with all your bets this weekend. Enjoy the violence. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the Super Bowl. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks and back on the Action podcast feed for a card 2 weeks from today. See ya.